Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back, to a time when chivalry and devotion tangled with pure, unadulterated terror. Imagine yourself on a dusty road in the Holy Land, the sun beating down, the air thick with anticipation, and the distant clang of steel. You're not just an observer, you're a pilgrim, your heart filled with hope, or perhaps a simmering dread of what lies ahead. And let's be real, if you were actually there, historical accuracy suggests you'd probably not make it out alive. Seriously, the hygiene alone would probably get you. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the sand crunching under your worn boots, the Middle Eastern sun relentless on your back as you make your slow, arduous way towards Jerusalem. The year is 1119 and the First Crusade, barely 2 decades past, has established a precarious foothold in the Holy Land. Yet, for all the Christian kingdoms carved out of the Levant, the roads remain treacherous. Bandits, disillusioned local populations, and opportunistic raiders make every pilgrimage a gamble with your life. You clutch your meager belongings tighter, your gaze constantly scanning the horizon, your ears straining for any sound beyond the mournful creak of your cart. Suddenly, a shimmer on the horizon, not a mirage, but something far more tangible. A group of riders, silhouetted against the unforgiving sun, emerging from the hazy distance. Your breath catches. Is it a raiding party? Are these your last moments? Then, as they draw closer, details emerge. The distinct white mantles, emblazoned with a bold red cross, flapping gently in the desert breeze. The stern, yet resolute, faces beneath their helmets. These aren't brigands. These are the Knights Templar. You watch, fascinated and relieved, as they move with an almost monastic discipline, their horses powerful and their armor gleaming despite the dust. You've heard tales of them, of course. A new order, established with the explicit purpose of protecting pilgrims just like you. Born from the vision of Hugh de Paynes and 8 other knights, they initially lacked a formal home, instead relying on the charity of others. Their initial living quarters, you might find amusingly humble given their future grandeur, were in a wing of the royal palace on the Temple Mount, hence the Templar in their name. Imagine a small band of armed monks sharing a space that was once the site of the Solomon's Temple. It's almost quaint. Isn't it a bit like starting a global tech company out of a garage, only with more swords and less venture capital? They cut a striking figure in a stark contrast to the rough-and-tumble mercenaries and eager, if sometimes ill-disciplined, crusaders you've encountered. You observe their quiet efficiency, their lack of ostentation. There are no grand banners or elaborate flourishes, just a quiet, purposeful strength. This austerity, you realize, is part of their appeal. They are not here for personal glory or territorial gain, but for a higher spiritual calling. Or so it seems. You continue your journey, often under their watchful gaze, or at least knowing they patrol the routes you travel. Their numbers are few in these early days, perhaps just a dozen or so, yet their impact is immediate. The mere presence of the white mantle and red cross, you notice, seems to deter many would-be attackers. You feel a tangible sense of security, a slight easing of the constant knot of fear in your stomach. It's a remarkable transformation. Considering just a few years prior, even the short journey from the coast to Jerusalem was fraught with danger. You can almost hear the sighs of relief from your fellow travelers, a collective exhalation of breath they didn't even realize they were holding. As days turn into weeks, you start to understand the unique nature of this fledgling order. They are not merely soldiers, they are monks. They take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, yet they wield swords and wear armor. It's a curious duality, one that initially raised a few eyebrows, even among the religious elite. Warrior monks. Some scoffed. Isn't that a contradiction in terms? But you see the necessity of it, in a land where prayer alone offers little defense against a Saracen blade. Perhaps a prayer with a blade is precisely what's needed. You learn that their rule, the framework for their daily lives, was eventually penned by Bernard of Clairvaux, a Cistercian abbot who would become one of the most influential figures of his time. Bernard, you might recall, was a rather persuasive fellow, capable of whipping up religious fervor with astonishing ease. He saw the Templars as a new kind of knighthood, a militia of Christ, and his endorsement was a game changer. He basically put them on the medieval equivalent of the Oprah's book club list. But for holy warriors, thanks to Bernard's eloquent words and tireless advocacy, the Templars gained official recognition from the Church at the Council of Troy in 1129. This formal approval was crucial. It legitimized their existence and, more importantly, allowed them to expand. With this papal blessing, things begin to change for the Templars, and you witness it firsthand. Donations start pouring in from across Europe. Wealthy nobles, pious commoners, and even kings, eager to secure spiritual merit, shower the order with land, money, and men. You see new recruits, idealistic young knights and aspiring squires, making the arduous journey to join the ranks. Some are fervent believers, eager to fight for God. Others, perhaps, are simply seeking adventure or a way out of a dead-end life in Europe. You can imagine the conversations back home. So, you going into farming, Jeff? Nah, I'm thinking about becoming a celibate knight in the desert. Sounds like a blast. Right? The order expands rapidly, establishing preceptories their administrative and financial centers and commanderies their local units across Christendom. They become a transnational organization, with a reach that extends from England to Spain, from France to the Holy Land. You see their influence grow not just on the dusty roads of the Levant, but in the bustling cities and quiet villages of Europe. They are no longer just a small band of defenders. They are becoming a force to be reckoned with. You observe their daily routine, a blend of monastic discipline and military training. They rise before dawn for prayers, then spend their days honing their martial skills, sword fighting, horsemanship, tactical maneuvers. Yet, despite their military prowess, they are forbidden from personal luxuries. Their food is simple, their clothing unadorned. They sleep on straw mattresses, and their lives are dedicated to the service of God and the protection of pilgrims. You might even catch a glimpse of them sharing a single bowl for two, as a mark of their humility and poverty. Imagine that for a minute, sharing a meal with your battle buddy. Not out of camaraderie, but out of a strict religious rule. Talk about commitment. Talk about, as their wealth and influence grow, so too does their administrative capacity. They become pioneers in what we might call international finance. Pilgrims, before embarking on their perilous journeys, can deposit money with the Templars in Europe and withdraw it upon arrival in the Holy Land, effectively creating an early form of traveler's checks. You see merchants using their network to transfer funds across vast distances, bypassing the dangers of carrying large sums of gold. This innovative financial system, while initially born out of necessity, solidifies their economic power and makes them indispensable to the burgeoning trade routes of the medieval world. Historians still debate whether this financial innovation was a primary driver of their later downfall or merely an exacerbating factor. But you can see how it creates both immense value and immense vulnerability. Their castles, too, begin to dot the landscape of the Holy Land. Not just simple fortifications, but formidable strongholds, strategically placed to protect key routes and territories. You marvel at the sheer engineering prowess involved in building these behemoths, often in hostile environments. These castles become symbols of their power and commitment, beacons of Christian presence in a contested land. They are living proof of the Templars' growing might, a testament to the fact that they are not just here to pass through, but to stay. You continue to witness their evolution from a small, dedicated group to a powerful, wealthy, and highly influential organization. The initial modesty that characterized their beginnings slowly gives way to a more established, almost regal presence. They are no longer just protectors, they are power brokers, advisors to kings and popes, managers of vast estates, and leaders of armies. You might even hear whispers, sometimes admiring, sometimes resentful, of their growing autonomy. They answer directly to the Pope, largely exempt from the authority of local bishops and kings. This unique privilege grants them significant freedom, but also plants the seeds of future conflict. It's almost like they have their own direct line to the top, bypassing all the middle management, which, as anyone who's worked in a large organization knows, can either be incredibly efficient or incredibly annoying to everyone else. As the years pass, you see the Holy Land itself transform. The initial fervor of the Crusades has cooled, replaced by a more pragmatic, often weary reality. The Crusader states are constantly under threat, and the Templars, with their unwavering commitment and military prowess, become an increasingly vital bulwark against the forces of Islam. They participate in countless battles, their bravery and discipline becoming legendary. You hear tales of their charges into overwhelming odds, their refusal to retreat, even when victory seems impossible. Their reputation for ferocity in battle is well earned, a testament to their rigorous training and profound sense of duty. Yet, you also begin to sense a shift in the air. The very power that makes them indispensable also makes them targets. Their wealth, accumulated through donations, spoils of war, and their sophisticated financial dealings is immense. They become creditors to kings, holding vast sums of money and property. You hear murmurs of envy, of resentment, particularly from secular rulers who struggle with their own financial woes. The idea of a monastic order, dedicated to poverty, yet possessing such vast riches, starts to feel increasingly incongruous to some. It's the classic tale of success breeding resentment, isn't it? When you're the one with all the gold and everyone else is counting pennies, people start looking for reasons to take it from you. And unfortunately for the Templars, there were plenty of reasons that could be manufactured. You continue to observe the Templars, their white mantles now a ubiquitous sight across the Latin East and increasingly in Europe itself. The order, once a humble band of protectors, has blossomed into a sophisticated, multifaceted organization. You see their vast network of castles, like the imposing Croix des Chevaliers, a truly magnificent fortress, or the strategically vital Safed, perched on hilltops, designed not just for defense but as centers of administration and power. These aren't just military outposts. They're hubs of commerce, strongholds for pilgrims, and even, at times, miniature cities in their own right, teeming with craftsmen, scribes, and servants. You might hear the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer or the low murmur of voices from within their walls. It's almost like a medieval version of a self-contained corporate campus, complete with its own security detail. Except instead of designing software, they're designing defenses against Saracen armies. Their financial acumen, which you first glimpsed in their early days, has now fully matured. They are, quite simply, the central bankers of the medieval world. Kings, popes, and powerful nobles deposit their wealth with the Templars, knowing it is safe within their impregnable commanderies. You see elaborate ledgers, meticulously kept, tracking vast sums of money moving across borders with a precision that would impress a modern accountant. They issue letters of credit, effectively allowing safe transfer of funds without the physical risk of transporting coin. Imagine needing to send money from Paris to Jerusalem in the 12th century. The Templars were your FedEx and your bank rolled into one. You might even use their services to send a payment for a particularly fetching set of Crusader chic armor. This financial power grants them immense leverage. When a king needs funds for a new military campaign or a noble requires capital to expand his estates, often it is the Templars they turn to. You witness loans being negotiated, sometimes at considerable interest, binding the secular powers ever more closely to the spiritual military order. This intertwining of finances creates a complicated web of dependencies. On one hand, it makes the Templars indispensable. On the other, it makes them exceptionally vulnerable. After all, if you owe someone a lot of money, you might start looking for ways to avoid paying them back. And if that someone happens to be an enormously wealthy and powerful religious order, well, things could get interesting. Beyond finance, their military might is undeniable. You see them on the field of battle, their discipline and courage legendary. They fight as a cohesive unit, their charges devastating, their defense unyielding. At key battles like Harim in 1164 or Montgessar in 1177, you witness their pivotal role, often turning the tide against seemingly insurmountable odds. Their white mantles, stained with dust and sometimes blood, become symbols of both fear and awe. They are often the first into the fray and the last to retreat, embodying their vow to fight to the death rather than abandon their faith or their comrades. You'd certainly want them on your side in a tavern brawl, let alone a pitched battle. However, their very success begins to breed internal tensions and external resentments. Within the order, the strict vows of poverty and asceticism, while still upheld by many, become increasingly challenging to maintain amidst such vast wealth. You hear whispers of occasional transgressions, of knights enjoying a bit too much comfort, or commanders managing their estates with a touch too much worldly ambition. These are minor infractions, perhaps compared to the larger picture, but they chip away at the pristine image the Templars cultivate. Externally, the secular rulers of Europe, particularly the kings, begin to chafe under the Templars' immense power and independence. Remember, the Templars answer only to the Pope. This means they are exempt from local taxes, free from the jurisdiction of local bishops, and their vast properties cannot be confiscated by kings without direct papal approval. You can almost feel the simmering frustration from monarchs who see huge tracts of land and immense wealth within their kingdoms, yet entirely beyond their control. It's like having a massively successful, tax-exempt, self-governing entity operating right in the middle of your country. And as you might imagine, kings, being kings, tend not to like that very much. They prefer to be the ones with all the power, thank you very much. The kings of France, in particular, begin to feel the pressure. Philip IV, known as Philip the Fair, is a monarch with an insatiable need for money. He is constantly at war, constantly expanding his power, and constantly in debt. You see his agents tirelessly seeking new sources of revenue, and his gaze, inevitably, falls upon the Templars. Their wealth is legendary, their coffers reportedly overflowing. Philip, a shrewd and ruthless politician, begins to recognize the Templars not just as valuable financial partners, but as a potential solution to his own crippling debts. He's like a medieval CEO eyeing a profitable, independently run subsidiary that he desperately wants to absorb into his own struggling conglomerate. You start to hear the first subtle shifts in public perception. While initially revered, the Templars' mystique begins to fray. Their secrecy, once seen as a sign of their solemn commitment, now begins to breed suspicion. They conduct their affairs largely behind closed doors, their rituals and internal workings known only to initiates. This secrecy, combined with their immense wealth and power, makes them an easy target for rumors and gossip. People start to wonder what exactly goes on behind those formidable castle walls. Are they truly as pious as they claim? Or is there something more sinister at play? One particularly sticky point for historical debate is the Battle of Harim. While they fought bravely, the battle was a crushing defeat for the Crusader forces, with many Templars captured or killed. Some historians still debate whether the defeat was due to poor strategic decisions by the overall Crusader leadership, or if the Templars, despite their bravery, were simply overwhelmed. You can imagine the post-battle recriminations, the pointing fingers, even among allies. It's easy to look back with hindsight and Monday morning quarterback these medieval battles. But at the time, defeats like this certainly didn't help the Templars' long-term reputation. You also notice the growing friction between the Templars and other powerful groups, including other monastic orders like the Hospitallers and even local bishops. Each order has its own agenda, its own loyalties, and often its own financial interests. The Templars' papal exemptions mean they don't always defer to local ecclesiastical authority, which naturally causes resentment. Imagine a modern-day scenario where a huge corporation operates entirely outside local and state laws, only answering to the CEO of a global conglomerate. That's a bit like the Templars' position, and it rubbed a lot of powerful people the wrong way. The Templars also face increasing scrutiny over their very purpose. As the Crusader states in the Holy Land begin to falter and lose ground to the resurgent Muslim forces, questions arise. If the Templars are so powerful, so devoted, so well-funded, why aren't they winning you hear grumbling from ordinary folk, from frustrated nobles, even from within the church hierarchy? The fall of Acre in 1291, the last major Crusader stronghold in the Holy Land, marks a devastating blow. It signals the definitive end of the Crusader dream. And suddenly, the Templars, whose primary mission was the defense of the Holy Land, find themselves without a clear, immediate purpose in the eyes of many. They are forced to withdraw their headquarters to Cyprus, a rather ignominious retreat after 2 centuries of fighting. This loss of their raison d'etre leaves a void. What now for an order of warrior monks whose holy mission has effectively evaporated, their vast wealth and powerful organization, once channeled into the defense of the Holy Land, now seem aimless to some, or worse, a dangerous accumulation of power with no clear external outlet. You can sense the uncomfortable shift, the feeling that a very large, very well-armed, very rich entity is now adrift. and perhaps a little too powerful for comfort. This is the calm before the storm, the subtle darkening of the sky before the lightning strikes. The stage is being set for something truly horrifying to unfold, and you, the unwitting observer, are right there to see it all begin. You can feel the subtle shift in the air, a growing unease that permeates the royal courts and the common markets alike. The once unquestionable piety of the Knights Templar, their heroic image forged in the fires of the Crusades, begins to crack under the weight of whispers and suspicions. You hear the hushed tones in taverns, the nervous glances exchanged in cathedral aisles. It's not just the Templars' immense wealth that breeds resentment now. It's their very nature, their perceived arrogance, their secrecy, and crucially, their perceived failure. The fall of Acre, the loss of the Holy Land, casts a long, dark shadow over their reputation. If they were truly God's chosen warriors, why did God abandon them? These insidious whispers, like tendrils of smoke, begin to coalesce into something far more dangerous: concrete accusations. And leading the charge, or at least strategically fanning the flames, is Philip IV of France, a monarch whose ambition is matched only by his staggering debt. You see him, a man of striking appearance, hence the fair, but with a cold, calculating gaze. He is a king who believes in the absolute power of the monarchy, and anyone or anything that stands outside his control is a threat. The Templars, what with their immense wealth and their unique allegiance directly to the Pope, represent a massive, tantalizing obstacle. Imagine a shark circling its prey, slowly tightening its spiral, testing the waters before the final, decisive strike. That's Philip. Philip's financial woes are legendary. He's been fighting costly wars with England and Flanders, debasing his coinage, and extorting money from Jews and Lombards within his kingdom. But these are temporary fixes, stopgap measures. He needs a grand, spectacular windfall. And the Templars, with their legendary treasure hoards, their vast properties, and their sophisticated financial network, represent the ultimate prize. He's not just eyeing their gold, he's eyeing their entire infrastructure, their entire existence, as a solution to his kingdom's bankruptcy. It's a rather ruthless, yet undeniably effective, strategy for a desperate king. The campaign against the Templars doesn't begin with a sudden attack. Instead, it starts with a careful, insidious propagation of rumors and fabricated charges. You hear the most outlandish accusations being spread that the Templars denied Christ during their initiation ceremonies, spat on the cross, engaged in idolatry, practiced sodomy, worshipped a demonic head known as Baphomet, and committed various other sacrileges and heresies. These charges, you realize, are not new in the annals of medieval accusations. They are the standard playbook for destroying a powerful rival. Accuse them of heresy, and you condemn them not just in the eyes of the king, but in the eyes of God. It's a rather clever, if utterly despicable, tactic. You might wonder where these accusations came from. The key figure in propagating these charges is a man named Esso de Floran, a former Templar who had been expelled from the order for unspecified crimes. He, along with another unsavory character, a defrocked priest named Nofo Day, began to spread these lurid tales. Their motives are murky: revenge, greed, or perhaps promises of reward from Philip's agents. Regardless, their stories, however fantastical, found fertile ground in the increasingly suspicious atmosphere surrounding the Templars. It's a classic case of disgruntled former employees, amplified by a powerful, manipulative media machine, in this case, the king's vast network of officials and informants. Philip, ever the master manipulator, doesn't simply jump on these accusations. He carefully cultivates them, ensuring they gain traction and credibility. He uses his royal agents, his legal advisors, and even members of the Inquisition, which, remember, is largely controlled by the king in France, to investigate and amplify these claims. You see the machinery of the state slowly turning, gathering momentum, preparing for a devastating blow. It's a slow, deliberate strangulation, not a swift decapitation. The Pope at this time is Clement Ferry, a weak and indecisive pontiff, himself heavily influenced by Philip. Clement is French and largely dependent on Philip for his own power and security. He had even moved the papacy to Avignon, effectively placing it under the watchful eye and considerable influence of the French king. You can almost feel the immense pressure on Clement. He is caught between his duty to protect a powerful order of the church and his overwhelming fear of antagonizing the most powerful monarch in Europe? It's a terrible position to be in, like being stuck between a rock and a very, very hard place, where the hard place is a king who doesn't mind breaking a few eggs to make his omelet. The legal justification for Philip's actions is flimsy at best, based on flimsy accusations and the king's assertion of his right to act against heresy within his domain. But in the late 13th and early 14th centuries, the line between secular and ecclesiastical authority is often blurred, and a powerful king like Philip is not one to let legal niceties stand in his way. He issues secret orders to his royal seneschals and bailiffs across France. These orders are remarkably detailed, instructing them on precisely how to coordinate the arrests, how to seize Templar assets, and how to conduct the initial interrogations. You sense the tension building, the quiet preparations for an event of unprecedented scale. The Templars, for all their military might and financial sophistication, seem strangely unaware of the impending catastrophe. Perhaps their very insularity, their long-standing independence, has blinded them to the danger. Or perhaps they simply cannot conceive that a Christian king would dare to move against an order that served God and the Church for 2 centuries. They are, after all, heroes of the faith, protectors of pilgrims, and respected by popes and kings alike. To imagine a king turning on them like this would have seemed unimaginable, a betrayal of the highest order. This is a stark reminder. You reflect that even the most powerful institutions can be brought down by a combination of political opportunism, financial desperation, and manufactured fear. The accusations themselves, however absurd they seem to you now, tap into deep-seated anxieties of the medieval period, fear of heresy, fear of secret societies, fear of spiritual corruption. By framing the Templars as heretics and idolaters, Philip not only justifies his actions but also ensures public support, or at least acquiescence, for his ruthless plan. It's a masterclass in propaganda, long before the term even existed. Historians still debate the precise level of complicity or foresight among the Templar leadership. Some scholars argue that Grand Master Jacques de Molay, the last leader of the order, was either incredibly naive or criminally negligent in his failure to recognize the danger. Others contend that the speed and secrecy of Philip's operation made it virtually impossible to defend against. You can imagine the frustration. How do you fight against shadows, against whispers, against a king who holds all the cards and controls the narrative? It's an academic argument that, while interesting, doesn't change the grim outcome for the Templars. As you stand poised at the brink of this dramatic downfall, you feel a chilling premonition. The stage is set. The accusations have been crafted, the king's motive is clear, and the unsuspecting Templars remain largely oblivious. What comes next will redefine the very concept of justice and power in medieval Europe, and it will send shockwaves through the entire continent. You are about to witness the horrifying climax of a grand, tragic story, played out not on the battlefield but in the cold, calculating halls of power. You are now standing on the precipice of a historical earthquake, a moment when the seemingly unshakable power of the Knights Templar is about to crumble with terrifying speed. Philip IV, having carefully orchestrated the whispers of heresy and the manufactured accusations, is ready to make his move. This isn't just a legal maneuver, it's a military-style operation, planned with the precision of a seasoned general, aiming for maximum surprise and overwhelming force. You feel a chilling sense of foreboding as the date approaches Friday, October 13th, 1307, a date that will forever be etched in the annals of misfortune, perhaps even contributing to the enduring superstition surrounding Friday the 13th. Philip has dispatched sealed orders to his royal agents, the seneschaux and baillis, across every corner of France. These orders are so secret, so meticulously guarded, that they are not to be opened until the very last moment. Imagine the tension, the nervous anticipation among the king's men, holding these sealed envelopes containing the fate of one of the most powerful organizations in Christendom. It's like a medieval spy thriller, but with much higher stakes and infinitely worse dental hygiene. As the sun rises on that fateful Friday, you witness the unfolding drama. Simultaneously, across the length and breadth of France, the sealed orders are broken open. The contents are stark and unambiguous. Arrest every Knight Templar within their jurisdiction. Seize all their property, their castles, their commanderies, their precious records, and their legendary treasury. The sheer scale of this coordinated strike is unprecedented. It requires an immense logistical effort, a network of royal officials, local soldiers, and even townsfolk mobilized for this single, brutal purpose. You see the scene play out in various locations. In Paris, the Templar headquarters, the mighty temple fortress, is surrounded. This imposing structure, with its towering walls and formidable defenses, had served as a secure bank for kings and a refuge for the wealthy. Now it is besieged by the very authority it once protected. Knights, accustomed to defending against external foes, are caught entirely off guard. They are dragged from their beds, from their meals, from their prayers, bewildered and disoriented. There is no time to organize a defense, no opportunity to gather their assets or destroy incriminating documents, if indeed such documents even existed. The surprise is absolute. You watch as Templars are rounded up, their white mantles now a symbol of their undoing rather than their strength. They are men of God, bound by vows of poverty and chastity, yet also fierce warriors. But in this moment, stripped of their weapons and their prepared defenses, they are vulnerable, ordinary men. You can hear their cries of protest, their bewildered questions, their appeals to justice, all met with the cold, unyielding silence of the king's men. It's a stark illustration of how quickly power can shift, how easily the hunter can become the hunted. The immediate aftermath is a frenzy of activity. Royal agents swarm through Templar properties, meticulously cataloging every asset. You see chests overflowing with gold and silver coin, valuable religious artifacts, meticulously kept financial records, vast stores of grain, and impressive armories. The sheer scale of their wealth, which had been rumored for decades, is now laid bare for the king's greedy eyes. It's a trove beyond measure, precisely what Philip needed to alleviate his crushing debts. And the common folk, watching from a distance, perhaps feel a flicker of schadenfreude, a perverse satisfaction at seeing such immense wealth brought low. After all, what's good for the king must be good for the people, right? The arrests are not gentle. You hear reports of Templars being immediately subjected to initial interrogations, designed to extract confessions. The techniques used are brutal, a stark preview of the horrors to come. Sleep deprivation, starvation, and threats are employed. The goal isn't to find truth, it's to confirm the king's manufactured narrative. They are pressured to admit to the litany of charges denying Christ, spitting on the cross, idolatry of the Baphomet, kissing the posterior of their superiors, and various other unspeakable acts. Many, under duress, will undoubtedly confess to anything to stop the torment. You also observe the curious, almost contradictory role of the Church. Pope Clement V, while initially hesitant, issues a papal bull, Pastoralis Praeeminentiae, on November 22, 1307, ordering the arrest of Templars in all Christian lands and the seizure of their properties on behalf of the Church. This effectively legitimizes Philip's actions, at least retrospectively. Clement is clearly under Philip's thumb, unable or unwilling to directly defy the powerful French king. He is walking a tightrope, trying to maintain papal authority while placating a monarch who has shown himself capable of extreme measures. You might feel a pang of pity for Clement, caught between a rock and a very, very hard place. But then again, he is the Pope, and one might expect a little more backbone. The swiftness and decisiveness of Philip's operations speak volumes about his character. He is not a man to shy away from ruthless action to achieve his aims. He has learned from previous attempts to expropriate wealth from other groups, like the Jews. That surprise and overwhelming force are key. He leaves no room for resistance, no time for the Templars to rally their allies or organize a counterattack. It is a masterful, albeit morally reprehensible, display of state power. One of the most surprising and historically debated aspects of this phase is the apparent lack of resistance from the Templars themselves. Given their reputation as fierce warriors, their extensive military training, and their vast network of castles, you might expect them to put up a fight. Yet, there is very little organized resistance reported. Some historians argue this is further evidence of their complete unpreparedness and the shock of the arrests. Others suggest that their monastic vows meant they were unwilling to shed Christian blood, even in self-defense. Or perhaps they simply believed that justice would prevail, that their innocence would be proven. It's a chilling thought that adherence to their principles ultimately rendered them defenseless against a king who had none. The immediate aftermath of October 13th is chaos for the Templars. Those who aren't immediately arrested go into hiding, some fleeing to other European kingdoms where Philip's influence is weaker. But even there, under papal pressure, the noose begins to tighten. The systematic seizure of their assets means that even those who escape the initial dragnet are left without resources. Their order effectively crippled financially and organizationally. You see their grand castles, once symbols of their power, now occupied by royal garrisons, their banners replaced by the fleur-de-lis of France. This single day marks the beginning of the end for the Knights Templar. Their wealth is now in Philip's hands, their leaders imprisoned, and their reputation irrevocably tarnished by the vile accusations. The stage is set not for a trial of truth, but for a spectacle of predetermined guilt. The machinery of persecution, once set in motion, will prove impossible to stop, consuming the Templars in a blaze of false accusations and brutal interrogations. You can almost taste the injustice in the air, a bitter tang that promises no sweet resolution. The immediate aftermath of that fateful Friday the 13th leaves you with a profound sense of shock. The Knights Templar, once untouchable, are now reduced to prisoners, their bodies broken, their spirits slowly being crushed. You witness the grim reality of their captivity, a systematic campaign of psychological and physical torture designed to extract confessions to the outlandish charges leveled against them. This is not about justice. It is about legitimizing Philip's seizure of their immense wealth. You see the Templars, many of them elderly, some still bearing the scars of battles in the Holy Land, dragged into dark, damp dungeons across France. Their interrogation is swift and brutal, conducted by royal inquisitors, men loyal to Philip, not to truth. The methods are chillingly effective. Imagine yourself, perhaps a knight who has faced down Saracen armies, now tied to a rack, your limbs stretched to their breaking point. Or perhaps you're subjected to the strappado, where your hands are tied behind your back and you're hoisted into the air by a rope, then suddenly dropped, dislocating your shoulders. The pain, you realize, would be excruciating, beyond anything a battlefield wound could inflict. The interrogators don't ask open-ended questions. They present the accusations as established facts, demanding only confirmation. Did you deny Christ? Did you spit on the cross? Did you worship the Baphomet? These are not inquiries but leading statements, designed to trap and condemn. You hear the agonizing screams of those who resist, their defiance slowly eroding under relentless torment. Many, unable to bear the agony, eventually break. You hear their forced confessions, hollow and mechanical, parroting the words fed to them by their tormentors. It's a sickening spectacle, a perversion of justice where innocence is irrelevant and guilt is predetermined. One of the most frequently confessed heresies is the denial of Christ and spitting on the cross during a secret initiation ceremony. This charge, while abhorrent, is a strategic choice by Philip. It paints the Templars as anti-Christian, making their vast wealth seem ill-gotten and their suppression a righteous act. Some historians still debate whether there was any kernel of truth to these ritualistic accusations, perhaps a symbolic denial to teach humility or a test of absolute obedience. But the vast majority agree that the extreme blasphemous interpretation used by Philip was entirely fabricated or grossly distorted. It's the kind of thing where a friendly nudge becomes a full-blown assault in the hands of a clever storyteller. You also hear confessions of homosexuality sodomy, a grievous sin in medieval Europe. This charge, like the others, serves to further demonize the Templars, making them out to be morally corrupt and deserving of divine punishment. And then there's the infamous Baphomet. Imagine a Templar under duress, describing a strange, idol-like head that they were forced to worship. The descriptions vary wildly. Some say it was a bearded head, others a cat. Still others a grotesque figure with multiple faces. The truth is, no credible evidence of such an idol has ever been found outside of these forced confessions. It was likely a construct of the interrogator's imagination, a fantastical element designed to make the heresy sound even more outlandish and terrifying to the common folk. Pope Clement V, remember, is still caught between a rock and a hard place. While he has issued the bull Pastoralis Preeminentiae ordering arrests, he is also technically the head of the Templar order. The forced confessions, extracted under torture, place him in an impossible position. On one hand, He hears testimony from the Templars themselves, confessing to grave sins. On the other hand, he knows, or at least suspects, that these confessions are coerced. The academic debate on Clement's true feelings and his level of complicity is still very much alive. Did he genuinely believe the Templars were guilty? Or was he simply a pawn in Philip's brutal game, too afraid to challenge the French king directly? In the spring of 1308, Clement tries to assert some papal authority. He temporarily suspends the Inquisition's proceedings against the Templars in France, hoping to bring the matter under direct papal control. He sends 2 cardinals to interview Grand Master Jacques de Molay and other senior Templars, who are still imprisoned in Philip's dungeons. To the surprise of Philip and perhaps even Clement, de Molay and many other senior knights initially recant their forced confessions when questioned by the papal delegates. You can imagine Philip's fury. This public recantation threatens to unravel his entire scheme. This act of defiance by de Molay and others is a powerful moment. It suggests that despite the torture, a core of resistance remains. They had confessed under duress, but when given a moment of respite and the perceived presence of genuine ecclesiastical authority, they dared to retract their fabricated admissions. This, of course, only infuriates Philip further. He cannot allow this narrative to persist. He needs absolute, undeniable confessions to justify his actions, and to keep the Templar wealth in his coffers. Philip's response is swift and brutal. He circumvents the papal authority by arranging for secular trials, specifically targeting those Templars who had recanted their confessions. These trials are nothing more than show trials, kangaroo courts designed to reach a predetermined verdict. You watch as Templars are brought before these tribunals, often still bearing the visible marks of torture. Their attempts to defend themselves, to assert their innocence, are met with dismissal and ridicule. The most horrific outcome of these secular trials occurs in May 1310. Philip, desperate to silence the recantations and push through his condemnation, orders the burning of 54 Templars at the stake, just outside Paris. These are men who had confessed under torture but then bravely recanted their confessions, proclaiming their innocence. Their agonizing deaths are meant to send a clear message: confess and live, or recant and burn. You can almost smell the smoke, hear the screams, a horrifying testament to the king's ruthlessness. It's a chilling tactic, designed to break the will of any remaining defiant Templars. This mass execution effectively silences most of the opposition. Faced with such an agonizing fate, many remaining Templars who had recanted now reconfess, desperate to avoid the flames. The Inquisition, now firmly back under Philip's sway, resumes its systematic work, continuing to extract confessions through torture. The sheer scale of the operation, the hundreds of Templars interrogated and imprisoned, creates an atmosphere of terror and hopelessness. You might wonder about the role of ordinary people during this period. Some undoubtedly believed the accusations, fueled by centuries of suspicion of secret societies and by the Church's own propaganda against heresy. Others, perhaps, harbored private doubts but were too afraid to voice them, knowing the king's wrath could easily turn upon anyone who questioned his authority. It's a classic example of how fear can silence dissent and allow even the most outrageous lies to gain traction. As the months turn into years, the fate of the Templars seems sealed. The bulk of their confessions have been obtained, their property largely seized, and their leadership languishing in dungeons. The horror of the initial arrests and interrogations gives way to a slow, agonizing grind towards a predetermined end. The once mighty order, which had inspired awe and reverence for 2 centuries, is now nothing more than a broken shadow of its former self, its reputation irrevocably sullied by the very king it once served. You can feel the weight of this injustice, a heavy cloak draped over the entire kingdom, a dark stain on the conscience of a desperate king. You have witnessed the raw, brutal efficiency of Philip IV's campaign against the Templars. The initial arrests, the systematic torture, the forced confessions, and the chilling public burnings have largely broken the order's will to resist. But the ultimate fate of the Knights Templar, their very dissolution, still rests with a reluctant figure, Pope Clement V. He is the key, the one who technically holds the authority to decide the order's future. Yet he is caught in an agonizing struggle between his spiritual duty and the overwhelming political pressure from the French king. You see Clement on a man whose delicate health seems to mirror his precarious position. He is a French pope, elected largely due to Philip's influence, and he has moved the papacy to Avignon, a city on the edge of Philip's direct control, but still undeniably within his sphere of influence. This geographic shift itself signals the waning power of the papacy relative to the burgeoning secular monarchies, particularly France. Clement is essentially a guest, or perhaps a prisoner, in Philip's kingdom, dependent on the king for his safety and even his very legitimacy. It's like having your boss live in your most aggressive competitor's guest house. You can imagine the kind of advice he's getting on a regular basis. Philip, ever the strategist, understands that while he has crippled the Templars in France, their existence as a papal order means that only the Pope can officially dissolve them, and he is determined to see the order utterly destroyed. He relentlessly pressures Clement, sending a steady stream of envoys, legal arguments however flimsy, and veiled threats. He emphasizes the confessions extracted under torture, presenting them as irrefutable proof of the Templars' profound heresy and corruption. You can almost hear Philip's insistent voice in Clement's ear, a constant nagging reminder of the king's power and demands. Clement, despite his weakness, attempts to navigate this impossible situation. He convenes a great ecclesiastical council, the Council of Vienne, which opens in October 1311. This council is meant to be the ultimate arbiter of the Templars' fate. You see bishops, abbots, and theologians from across Europe gathering, a solemn assembly intended to discuss crucial church matters, including, most prominently, the Templar question. It's supposed to be a grand, deliberative body, but you sense an undercurrent of fear and manipulation. Philip, however, is not content to let the council proceed entirely freely. He travels to Vienne himself, arriving with a large retinue and, crucially, a sizable armed guard, effectively intimidating the assembled clerics. His presence is a blunt assertion of secular power over ecclesiastical authority. He makes it clear that he expects the Templars to be condemned. Any dissenting voices, you realize, would be risking not just their careers, but potentially their lives. It's a rather unsubtle way of ensuring everyone votes the way you want them to. During the council, many voices are raised in defense of the Templars. Some bishops, particularly those from outside France, argue that the Templars should be allowed to defend themselves, that due process has not been followed, and that the confessions were clearly extracted under duress. Some even suggest that the charges are baseless, manufactured purely for financial gain. You hear their impassioned arguments, their appeals to justice and fairness, but they are drowned out by the louder, more threatening voice of the French king and his allies. A crucial point of contention arises: the Templars themselves request to be heard. Several knights, who had managed to escape Philip's dragnet and present themselves before the council, offer to defend the order. This development throws Clement into a fresh dilemma. To allow the Templars to present a full defense would expose the brutal methods of Philip's Inquisition and potentially invalidate all the forced confessions. It would be a monumental embarrassment for Philip and a direct challenge to his authority. Under immense pressure from Philip, Clement eventually decides against allowing the Templars a full public defense. This decision effectively seals their fate. It means that the evidence against them, the confessions extracted through torture, it will stand unchallenged. It's a tragic moment, a capitulation that prioritizes political expediency over fundamental principles of justice. You can almost feel the collective sigh of resignation from those who had hoped for a fair hearing. Finally, in March 1312, Clement issues the papal bull Vox in Excelso, a voice from on high. You hear its solemn words, echoing through the halls, formally dissolving the order of the Knights Templar. The bull states that while there was no conclusive evidence of the order's collective guilt of heresy, the accusations had caused such scandal and ill repute that the order could no longer effectively fulfill its purpose. Therefore, it was being dissolved, not by definitive sentence, but by an apostolic ordinance. This is a crucial distinction. Clement avoids outright condemning the order as heretical, a move that would have legally vindicated Philip. Instead, he dissolves it on grounds of expediency and scandal, a nuanced theological maneuver designed to preserve some semblance of papal authority while still giving Philip what he wanted. It's a polite way of saying, "We're not saying you're guilty, but you're causing too much trouble, so you're fired." The bull also dictates the fate of the Templars' vast wealth. Most of their properties are to be transferred to the Order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, commonly known as the Hospitallers, another powerful military order. This decision, while seemingly logical transferring wealth from one military order to another, is also a concession to Philip. In practice, a significant portion of the Templar assets in France, already seized by the king, never actually makes it to the Hospitallers. Philip, naturally, demands compensation for the expenses incurred during the arrests and trials, effectively siphoning off a substantial amount of the wealth for himself. You can imagine the Hospitallers' disappointment, expecting a windfall and getting, well, a heavily discounted yard sale. The dissolution of the Templars sends shockwaves across Europe. It demonstrates, in the clearest possible terms, that even a powerful, respected, and papally sanctioned order is not immune to the ruthless machinations of a determined king. It sets a dangerous precedent, weakening the traditional immunities of the church and strengthening the power of secular monarchs. You see other kings taking note, realizing that if Philip can bring down the Templars, perhaps they too can exert greater control over church institutions within their own realms. The remaining Templars, now officially without an order, face uncertain futures. Some are incorporated into other military orders, like the Hospitallers, though often with resentment and suspicion. Others are allowed to live out their lives as secular individuals, stripped of their vows and their former status. Still others, particularly those who resisted or were deemed particularly stubborn, remain imprisoned or face further persecution. Their white mantles are removed, their crosses taken from them, a visual representation of their forced stripping of identity. As you reflect on this phase, you consider the immense psychological toll on the Templars. Not only had they endured brutal torture and false accusations, but now their very identity, the brotherhood they had dedicated their lives to, has been erased by papal decree. Their purpose, their reason for being, vanished in a puff of legal smoke. It's a profound tragedy, a monument to political opportunism and the abuse of power, all under the guise of religious purity. The formal dissolution marks the end of an era, but for the most prominent Templar, the Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, the end is yet to come, and it will be horrifying. You have witnessed the formal dissolution of the Knights Templar, a move that, while orchestrated by Philip, was sanctioned by the highest authority of the Church. Yet, even with the order disbanded, the most prominent figures, particularly the Grand Master Jacques de Molay, remain a lingering problem for Philip IV. Their very existence, their continued imprisonment, is a constant reminder of the king's extraordinary actions and the dubious nature of the confessions. Philip needs a definitive public end to their story, one that unequivocally cements their guilt and justifies his extreme measures. You focus your attention on Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Templars. He has been imprisoned for years now, since that fateful Friday in 1307. He is an old man, perhaps in his 70s, worn down by years of captivity, torture, and the immense psychological burden of seeing his beloved order systematically dismantled. Yet, beneath the weariness, you sense a flicker of defiance, a deep-seated pride that refuses to be entirely extinguished. He represents the very heart of the Templar Order, and his fate will be its final tragic chapter. Along with de Molay, other senior Templar officials are still alive, languishing in various prisons. These include Geoffroy de Charnay, preceptor of Normandy, and Hugues de Perrot, visitor of France, among others. Like de Molay, they have endured unspeakable suffering and, under duress, have confessed to the fabricated charges. Their continued existence, however, poses a threat to Philip's narrative. What if they recant again? What if their survival undermines the carefully constructed edifice of Templar guilt? Philip, always pragmatic and ruthless, decides to bring the remaining high-ranking Templars to a final public spectacle. This is not a trial in any genuine sense, but a formality, a public pronouncement of their already predetermined guilt. The date is set for March 18, 1314. The location is a small island in the Seine River, the Ile de la Cité in Paris, directly in front of Notre Dame Cathedral. It's a deliberately public and symbolic setting, ensuring that the entire city, and by extension, all of Christendom, will witness the definitive end of the Templar saga. You are there, standing amidst the throng of onlookers. The air is cold and damp, a chill wind whipping off the river. A large wooden scaffold has been erected, clearly visible to the assembled crowd. Soldiers guard the perimeter, keeping the curious masses at bay. There's a palpable tension, a mixture of morbid curiosity and a strange sense of anticipation. People whisper about the Templars' legendary wealth, their supposed heresies, and the king's triumph. Jacques de Molay, Geoffroy de Charnay, and two other senior Templars are led out onto the scaffold. You see the deep lines etched on de Molay's face, the weariness in his eyes, but also a remarkable dignity. He is dressed simply, stripped of the grand robes of his office, but he carries himself with an air of calm authority. The sight of these once mighty knights, now humbled prisoners, is striking. A cardinal representing Pope Clement V begins to read out the official sentence. It's a long, monotonous recitation of their supposed crimes, detailing the confessions extracted under torture, reiterating the accusations of heresy, idolatry, and blasphemy. The words drone on a litany of falsehoods designed to condemn and vilify. You can almost feel the weight of these accusations pressing down on the old men. Then, something utterly unexpected happens. As the cardinal reaches the conclusion, declaring the Templars guilty and sentencing them to perpetual imprisonment, Jacques de Molay steps forward. His voice, though perhaps hoarse from years of disuse, rings out with surprising strength and clarity, cutting through the droning words of the cardinal and the murmurs of the crowd. He speaks not with anger, but with a quiet, resolute fury. He proclaims his innocence, and the innocence of the Order of the Temple. He declares that the confessions, his own included, were false, extracted under unimaginable torture and coercion. He states unequivocally that he denied Christ only with his lips, not with his heart, and that the order itself was pure and righteous. He recants his confession, and the confessions of his brothers, openly and defiantly, for all to hear. He looks directly at the crowd, at the royal officials, at the cardinals, his gaze unblinking. Geoffroy de Charnay follows suit, echoing de Molay's powerful recantation, asserting his own innocence and that of the order. The other two Templars, however, remain silent, perhaps too terrified, too broken to defy the king once more. The collective gasp from the crowd is almost audible. This is not the neat, controlled ending Philip had planned. This is a dramatic, public act of defiance, a challenge to the king's authority and the validity of the entire process. Philip IV, who is reportedly observing the proceedings from a distance, is absolutely furious. His carefully orchestrated triumph has been shattered by the unexpected bravery of two old men. This public recantation, before the very cathedral where future kings of France would be crowned, is an intolerable insult. It undermines his entire justification for seizing the Templar wealth and persecuting the order. He cannot allow this defiance to stand. Without consulting the church authorities present, or even seeking a new legal decree, Philip immediately orders the two defiant Templars, Jacques de Molay and Geoffroy de Charnay, to be burned at the stake. Not just burned, but executed that very evening, to prevent any further public outcry or attempts to intervene. It's an act of raw, unbridled rage and absolute power, bypassing all legal and ecclesiastical niceties. It's a clear demonstration of who truly holds power in France. You witness the gruesome preparations. A pyre is quickly constructed on the small island, piles of wood hastily gathered. The two old men are led to the stake. Even in these final moments, de Molay maintains his composure. As the flames begin to lick at his feet, he reportedly makes a chilling pronouncement, a curse that would echo through the centuries. He calls upon God to avenge the unjust deaths of himself and his brethren. He specifically summons Pope Clement V and King Philip IV to meet him before the judgment seat of God within a year and a day. The words hang in the cold night air, a prophecy of doom. You see the flickering light of the flames illuminating the faces of the crowd, a mixture of horror, fascination, and perhaps a creeping unease at the sheer brutality of it all. The screams of the dying men are swallowed by the crackle of the fire and the murmuring of the wind. It's a horrific scene, a testament to the lengths to which a king will go to protect his power and his ill-gotten gains. The deaths of Jacques de Molay and Geoffroy de Charnay mark the ultimate, brutal end of the Knights Templar. Their final defiance, their public declaration of innocence, transforms them from condemned heretics into martyrs in the eyes of many. The curse uttered by de Molay, whether a true prophecy or a desperate plea, would soon gain an eerie power as events unfolded in the coming months. The horrifying final days of the Templars are over, but the repercussions are just beginning. The acrid smell of smoke still hangs heavy in the Parisian air, a grim reminder of the horrifying end met by Jacques de Molay and Geoffroy de Charnay. You feel the chill of the night that followed their execution, a quiet sense of dread that settles over the city. Their defiant cries of innocence and de Molay's chilling curse reverberate in your mind, a prophecy whispered against the backdrop of crackling flames. What happens next? You realize it will either prove the king's ruthless justice or fulfill the condemned Grand Master's dying words. The immediate aftermath of the executions is a period of uneasy calm. Philip IV, having crushed the last vestiges of Templar defiance, is seemingly triumphant. He has seized their vast wealth, eliminated a powerful independent force within his kingdom, and seemingly silenced all opposition. You might imagine him feeling secure in his power, confident that his brutal methods have yielded their desired results. However, the weight of de Molay's curse begins to manifest with uncanny speed. The first to fall, just over a month after de Molay's execution, is Pope Clement XIV. You hear the news ripple through the continent. On April 20th, 1314, Clement dies, suffering from what appears to be dysentery. His illness had been prolonged, but his death so soon after the executions, and precisely within de Molay's year-and-a-day prophecy, sends shivers down the spines of many. His body reportedly bursts into flames after his death, a macabre detail that further fuels the supernatural whispers surrounding the Templar curse. Whether this detail is true or merely a gruesome embellishment by chroniclers, you recognize its powerful symbolic weight. It's almost too perfect, too timely, to be mere coincidence, isn't it? The death of the Pope, the very pontiff who had reluctantly dissolved the Templars and failed to protect them, is widely interpreted as divine retribution. People whisper that de Molay's curse is indeed real, that God himself is avenging the injustice done to the innocent knights. You can almost feel the collective unease spreading through the church and the royal courts. If the Pope himself is not immune, who is? Then the focus shifts to King Philip IV, the architect of the Templars' destruction. He, too, seems to fall prey to the curse, just 7 months after Clement's death. On November 29th, 1314, Philip the Fair dies unexpectedly. His death is sudden, attributed by some to a stroke or a hunting accident. But you hear the common folk murmur about a more sinister cause, the Grand Master's curse. The timing is chillingly precise, once again falling within the predicted time frame. The most powerful king in Europe, a man who believed himself above all earthly challenge, is struck down in the prime of his life. It's a dramatic, almost theatrical, fulfillment of a dying man's plea for justice. You can imagine the impact of these two deaths, back to back, on the medieval psyche. In an age deeply steeped in religious belief and superstition, such events are not dismissed as mere coincidence. They are seen as clear signs of divine intervention, proof that the Templars were indeed innocent and that their persecutors were being punished by God himself. The narrative of Templar heresy, so carefully constructed by Philip, begins to crumble under the weight of these chilling events. The curse, however, does not stop there. Philip's direct male line, known as the Capetian dynasty, also begins to unravel in a series of tragic and bizarre events, quickly gaining the moniker of the Cursed Kings of France. You watch as his 3 sons, who succeed him in quick succession, all die without producing surviving male heirs, leading to the extinction of the main Capetian line in just 14 years. First, there is Louis XVI, Philip's eldest son, who becomes king in 1314. He reigns for only 2 years before dying suddenly in 1316. His death is suspicious, with rumors of poisoning circulating, although you wouldn't be surprised if any untimely royal death in this period attracted such gossip. He leaves behind a pregnant wife, who gives birth to a son, John I, who lives for only 5 days. This infant king, born and died within days, is a poignant symbol of the sudden, inexplicable fragility of the royal line. It's almost as if the very continuity of the crown has been targeted by some unseen force. Next comes Philip V, the second son, who takes the throne after his infant nephew's brief reign. He rules for 6 years, attempting to consolidate power and restore stability, but he too dies prematurely in 1322 without a surviving male heir. You feel the growing sense of dread, the creeping suspicion that something truly unnatural is at play. The pattern is undeniable: successive kings, healthy men, dying young and leaving no male successors. Finally, the youngest son, Charles IV, becomes king in 1322. He reigns for another 6 years, and like his brothers, he dies in 1328 without a male heir. His death marks the absolute extinction of the direct Capetian line that had ruled France for over 3 centuries. It's a shocking, unprecedented turn of events. You reflect on the historical rarity of such a complete failure of succession in a powerful dynasty, especially one that had seemed so robust. The vacuum created by the deaths of Philip IV's sons and the absence of a direct male heir directly triggers the Hundred Years' War between England and France. Edward III of England, Philip IV's grandson through his daughter Isabella, claims the French throne. The French, however, invoke Salic law, which excludes inheritance through the female line and crown Philip VI as a cousin, leading to a devastating century of conflict. You realize that the Templar curse, whether supernatural or simply a bizarre coincidence, has arguably reshaped the very political landscape of medieval Europe for generations to come. It's almost like a butterfly effect, where the death of two old men sets off a chain reaction that engulfs two kingdoms in war. Historians, of course, offer more pragmatic explanations for these deaths and the succession crisis. Clement V suffered from a chronic illness, Philip IV had a history of health issues, and the general life expectancy in the Middle Ages was, to put it mildly, not great. The lack of male heirs in the Capetian line could be attributed to a combination of genetics, chance, and perhaps undisclosed illnesses or weaknesses. The academic argument still rages: was it divine retribution, or simply a series of remarkably unfortunate coincidences? Yet, for you, standing in that medieval world, the events unfold with an almost poetic, vengeful rhythm. The powerful, the manipulators, the ones who condemned the innocent, are themselves struck down. The story of the Templars, seemingly ended with fire and dissolution, gains a powerful, enduring epilogue. Their horrifying last days are now mirrored by the horrifying fates of their persecutors. The injustice, in the popular imagination at least, has been avenged. The Templars, though gone, leave behind a legacy not just of wealth and power, but of a chilling curse that continues to resonate through the centuries, a testament to their dramatic and tragic downfall. The horrifying events surrounding the fall of the Knights Templar, culminating in the fiery deaths of their Grand Master and the subsequent, almost supernatural, demises of Pope Clement V and King Philip IV, cast a long and indelible shadow over history. You feel the lingering chill of de Molay's curse, a testament to the power of a dying man's desperate plea for justice. But what became of the remaining Templars, the vast wealth, and the enduring legacy of an order that captivated the medieval world for 2 centuries? You observe the varied fates of the surviving Knights Templar. While the order was formally dissolved by papal decree, not all Templars were burned at the stake. Many, particularly those outside of Philip IV's direct control in France, were simply stripped of their vows and their property, often facing less brutal outcomes. In England, for instance, Edward II, Philip's son-in-law, initially resisted the accusations, but eventually succumbed to papal pressure, imprisoning Templars and seizing their assets, though torture was less prevalent than in France. You see knights, once proud warrior monks, now wandering the countryside, dispossessed and disoriented, their identity stripped away. Some find refuge in other monastic orders, blending into the larger ecclesiastical landscape, their Templar past often a whispered secret. Others attempt to return to secular life, a difficult transition for men who had known nothing but the strict discipline and communal life of the order for decades. It's like watching highly specialized, highly trained soldiers suddenly forced to become civilians, with no training or support. The transfer of Templar assets to the Hospitallers, mandated by Pope Clement V, proves to be a complex and contentious affair. While the Hospitallers theoretically inherited a vast fortune, the reality is far messier. You see kings, particularly Philip IV, claiming vast sums for their expenses in prosecuting the Templars. Much of the Templars' immense liquid wealth, their gold, silver, and other valuables, simply vanishes into royal treasuries, never to be accounted for. The Hospitallers therefore inherit primarily land and property, often dilapidated or heavily encumbered with debts and legal disputes. It's a rather bitter inheritance, like being given a magnificent but crumbling mansion that comes with a mountain of unpaid bills. The academic debate among historians often revolves around the precise amount of wealth truly transferred versus what was simply plundered by secular rulers. Some estimate that only a fraction of the Templars' alleged riches actually reached the Hospitallers, a rather unfortunate outcome for the supposed beneficiaries. The dissolution of the Templars leaves a significant void in the political and financial landscape of Europe. Their role as international bankers and protectors of pilgrims is now gone. While the Hospitallers attempt to fill some of these functions, they lack the Templars' established network and financial sophistication. You notice a decline in the security of pilgrim routes and a general disruption of cross-border finance. It's a testament to the Templars' unique and integral role that their absence creates such a vacuum. Perhaps the most enduring legacy of the Templars' horrifying end is the birth of the conspiracy theory. The sudden, dramatic fall of such a powerful and secretive order, coupled with the bizarre accusations and the even more bizarre deaths of their persecutors, provides fertile ground for speculation. You hear the whispers persist through the centuries, evolving into increasingly elaborate narratives. People claim that the Templars never truly vanished, that they went underground, preserving their secrets and their vast treasure. Some theories suggest they found refuge in Scotland, influencing the Scottish Wars of Independence, or that they were the true custodians of ancient secrets, perhaps even the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant. It's a testament to human fascination with the hidden and the forbidden, particularly when shrouded in tragedy and mystery. You reflect on the sheer human ingenuity, or perhaps credulity, required to craft such intricate narratives. The Templars, originally founded on principles of poverty and religious devotion, are reimagined as guardians of immense occult knowledge or masterminds of secret societies. Their distinctive red cross on a white background, once a symbol of Christian piety, becomes an emblem of mysterious power and hidden agendas. It's a fascinating transformation, where historical fact slowly gives way to popular myth. Fueled by selective interpretation and genuine gaps in the historical record, the enduring interest in the Templars also stems from their romantic image. The idea of warrior monks, dedicated to a sacred cause, is inherently appealing. Their mysterious rituals, their bravery in battle, and their tragic downfall combine to create a compelling narrative that transcends mere historical fact. You see this reflected in popular culture, from novels to films to video games, where the Templars are often portrayed as either noble heroes or sinister villains, rarely as the complex, flawed, yet undeniably influential organization they truly were. The academic debate about the Templars' guilt or innocence continues to this day, though with increasing clarity. While the confessions extracted under torture were, by modern standards, entirely unreliable, the Church's official stance for centuries remained that the order had been justifiably dissolved due to heresy. However, modern historical research, particularly the discovery of the Chinon parchment in 2001, has shed new light on Pope Clement V's private views. This document reveals that Clement, while formally dissolving the order, had privately absolved Demolay and other senior Templars in 1308 from the heresy charges, contingent on their confession and penance. This suggests that Clement himself had doubts about their guilt, or at least recognized the coercion involved in their confessions. This new evidence further strengthens the argument that the Templars were victims of political persecution rather than genuine heretics. It's like finding a hidden diary entry that completely changes your understanding of a historical event. You stand at the end of this long, winding historical road, a journey through faith, power, greed, and terrifying injustice. The Knights Templar, born from a desperate need to protect pilgrims, grew into a formidable force that shaped medieval Europe, only to be crushed by the ruthless ambition of a king and the weakness of a pope. Their story serves as a chilling reminder of the fragility of even the most powerful institutions when confronted with unchecked power and manufactured fear. Their horrifying last days were indeed a spectacle of injustice, but their legacy, both historical and mythical, continues to captivate and intrigue, a testament to a brotherhood that truly lived and died by the sword, under the cross. You have followed the Templars from their humble beginnings, witnessed their meteoric rise to unparalleled power, and watched their horrifying downfall at the hands of a desperate king. The echoes of Jacques de Molay's curse still resonate, a chilling reminder of the abrupt ends met by Philip IV and Clement V. But as you reflect on this epic tale, you realize its true impact lies not just in the historical facts, but in the enduring way it continues to shape our understanding of power, conspiracy, and the thin line between history and myth. The Knights Templar, though formally dissolved over 700 years ago, have never truly faded from public consciousness. You see their specter everywhere, from esoteric societies claiming direct lineage to them, to blockbuster movies and video games that reimagine their struggle. Why this persistent fascination? Perhaps it's the sheer drama of their story. The pious warrior monks, the immense wealth, the chilling accusations, the brutal torture, and the swift, almost supernatural, retribution. It's a narrative ripe for reinterpretation, a canvas onto which countless theories and fantasies can be projected. The academic debate continues to explore the nuances of their financial empire, their military innovations, and the precise legal mechanisms of their suppression, offering a continuous source of new insights and challenging established narratives. It's a testament to the fact that history is rarely a closed book. There are always new chapters to be written, or in this case, old ones to be reread with fresh eyes. Their impact on medieval Europe was undeniable. They were pioneers of international finance, creating a network that spanned the continent and the Holy Land, facilitating trade and protecting wealth. Their castles, like the formidable Croix des Chevaliers, stood as testaments to military engineering and strategic prowess. They were the elite fighting force of the Crusades, revered for their discipline and courage, often being the spearhead of attacks and the rearguard in retreats. Even in their downfall, they reshaped the political landscape, highlighting the growing power of secular monarchs over the church and inadvertently contributing to the dynastic crisis that plunged France and England into the Hundred Years' War. You can almost feel the ripples of their existence, even now, touching elements of modern society that might seem entirely unrelated. It's truly fascinating how a seemingly isolated event can have such profound, long-lasting consequences. Consider the notion of secret societies. The Templars' internal secrecy, while typical for monastic orders of the time, became a key weapon in Philip's arsenal. He exploited the public's inherent distrust of the unknown, turning their private rituals into evidence of sinister practices. This narrative, once unleashed, proved incredibly potent and continues to fuel conspiracy theories about clandestine groups operating in the shadows. You might reflect on how easily fear and suspicion can be manipulated, transforming private practices into public accusations, even in today's interconnected world. It's a timeless lesson in the dangers of misinformation. Long before the internet made it an everyday concern, the Templars also left an indelible mark on religious symbolism. The red cross on a white background, originally a simple mark of their crusader vow, became iconic. While now widely associated with emergency services and medical aid through the International Red Cross. Though they are distinct, its origins are firmly rooted in the medieval military orders. You might see it on flags, coats of arms, or even in modern design, a subtle, almost subconscious, reminder of an order long past. It's interesting how symbols can outlive the organizations they represent, taking on new meanings while retaining a ghost of their original purpose. Perhaps the most significant aspect of their legacy is the ongoing debate about historical justice. Were the Templars truly guilty, or were they innocent victims of political and financial opportunism? The overwhelming consensus among modern historians, especially after the discovery of documents like the Chinon parchment, leans heavily towards their innocence regarding the charges of heresy and blasphemy. They were, it seems, destroyed for their wealth and independence, a convenient scapegoat for a king in dire financial straits. This reassessment challenges the historical narrative crafted by their persecutors and forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that justice is not always served, and history is often written by the victors. It's a powerful lesson that still resonates today, reminding us to always question the official story and to seek out alternative perspectives. The Templars' story also serves as a potent cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the corrupting influence of greed. Philip IV's brutal efficiency in seizing their assets and silencing dissent demonstrates the terrifying potential of a monarch who places his own financial and political interests above all else, even divine law. It was an early, stark example of a secular state asserting its dominance over the church, a shift that would have profound implications for the balance of power in Europe for centuries to come. As you draw this narrative to a close, you consider the enduring human desire to find meaning and retribution in tragedy. The curse of Jacques de Molay, regardless of its scientific veracity, provides a satisfying, almost poetic conclusion to a tale of profound injustice. It allows for a sense of cosmic balance, where the powerful are eventually held accountable, even if only in the realm of folklore and popular memory. This need for narrative closure, for a sense of poetic justice, is perhaps as strong today as it was in the medieval world. So, as you drift off, let the story of the Knights Templar settle in your mind. From their fervent faith to their terrifying end, their tale is a complex tapestry woven with threads of devotion, power, betrayal, and enduring mystery. It reminds us that history is not just a collection of dates and names, but a living, breathing saga of human ambition, resilience, and the relentless march of time. The Templars may be gone, but their story, their horrifying last days, and their lasting echoes will continue to whisper through the ages, long after you've found your peaceful slumber.